pregnant wife walks in on her millionaire proposing to his mistress' shocking ending. They say every marriage has its secrets, but what if the biggest secret shatters your heart while you're carrying new life within you? Meet Serafina Lancaster, a loving wife, soon-to-be mother and pillar of elegance. Her husband, Grant Lancaster, is a suave millionaire with a polished public image. On the surface, they seem like the couple who has it all, until Serafina stumbles upon a glittering engagement ring meant for another woman. What follows is a harrowing journey of lies, betrayals, and secrets that run far deeper than she ever imagined. Brace yourself for a tale where love, revenge, and karma collide in the most shocking way. Serafina Lancaster woke to a sunrise that bathed her luxurious bedroom in gilded light. Reclining in bed, she let her hand drift across her abdomen, feeling the gentle flutter of the life growing inside her. Even half awake, she smiled at the thought she was 20 weeks pregnant, and in just a few months, she and Grant would be parents. To her, it felt like a fairy tale culminating in the ultimate blessing. From an outsider's perspective, Serafina and Grant defined #couple goals. He was the charismatic mastermind behind Lancaster Capital, regularly featured in financial publications like Bloomberg Businessweek for his strategic acquisitions. Serafina was often on the social pages for chairing charity galas and hospital fundraisers. Their home, a modern penthouse overlooking the glistening New York skyline, dazzled the city's elite. At social functions, they arrived arm in arm, projecting affection and unity that left their peers both admiring and envious. Yet beneath the sheen of perfection, subtle cracks existed. In recent months, Serafina had noticed Grant's late-night work habits becoming more frequent and more clandestine. He'd drift to his home office after dinner and lock the door behind him. Serafina, who believed wholeheartedly in Grant's dedication, rarely questioned him. She ascribed his growing secrecy to the pressure of running a multi-million-dollar enterprise and establishing a financial legacy. After all, she was sure that part of his drive came from wanting to ensure the baby's future. Still, a faint stirring of unease had begun to blossom in her heart. She couldn't identify its source, just an undefined worry that tugged at her intuition. Perhaps it was the way Grant's phone seemed to vibrate more often after midnight, or how he would abruptly silence calls when Serafina entered the room, offering a vague explanation about business emergencies. The more she observed, the more she felt something was off. But every time she mustered the courage to ask, she found herself swallowing the question. She didn't want to appear mistrustful or irrational, especially with her hormones in flux during pregnancy. This morning, however, her anxiety was momentarily overshadowed by excitement. Today marked the day of the Lancaster Children's Hospital benefit, an event she had poured her heart into organizing. It would be held at the iconic Plaza Hotel, a real-life fairy tale venue that had hosted presidents, movie stars, and society royalty. In a few hours, Serafina would be enveloped by the hustle of preparations, finalizing decorations, checking guest lists, ensuring the silent auction ran smoothly. Most of all, she was looking forward to seeing Grant there, proud by her side, supporting a cause so close to her heart. With a hopeful spark in her eyes, she rose from the bed, determined to silence her doubts. She told herself that the ache of uncertainty was a mere byproduct of stress and pregnancy. Today would be a moment of triumph, an opportunity to remember why she and Grant were so perfect together. Little did she know, the threads holding her world together were already fraying at the seams. Walking through the glitzy lobby of the Plaza Hotel, Serafina felt the electricity of the night buzzing all around her. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, reflecting off marble floors and mirrored walls. Esteemed guests and donors trickled in, men in sleek tuxedos, women in evening gowns that whispered of wealth and refinement. Everyone greeted her warmly, praising her organizing skills for the Lancaster Children's Hospital benefit. Serafina politely nodded, offering gracious smiles, her heart fluttering with a mix of nerves and exhilaration. But one person was conspicuously absent, Grant. Usually, he arrived early to high-profile events, keen to charm potential investors and appease the press. Tonight, though, his seat at the VIP table remained empty. Serafina tried calling him twice, but got no answer, only curt text replies about running behind. Her instincts prickled. She checked the time. The program was about to start. Despite her mounting anxiety, she took a deep breath, determined not to let Grant's absence overshadow the charitable cause. She stepped onto the small stage set up in the grand ballroom to deliver her welcome remarks. The hush that fell over the crowd reflected the respect she had earned through her philanthropic passion. She spoke about the importance of supporting pediatric care, how the funds raised would transform the hospital's facilities, and how they planned to establish a research unit for rare childhood diseases. Her speech concluded to hearty applause, yet her stomach clenched in disappointment at the single unoccupied chair in the front row. Where was Grant? As she left the stage, a gentle touch on her shoulder made her turn around. It was her close friend, Charlotte Hayworth, a society columnist for a prominent newspaper. Charlotte's frown of concern mirrored Serafina's own emotions. "Grant didn't make it?" Charlotte asked quietly. Serafina forced a smile. "He's running late business, you know." Charlotte's eyes flickered with compassion. Then she leaned in, lowering her voice. "Serafina, I want you to hear it from me before you read it anywhere else. There are rumors that Grant's been spotted around town with someone, a woman, younger, always in these hush-hush rendezvous." The words fell like stones in Serafina's gut. She swallowed hard, trying to maintain her composure. Whispers of an affair. It sounded ludicrous. Yet Charlotte's expression was genuine, and she wouldn't lie about something so serious. "I'm only telling you because you're my friend," Charlotte continued. "I don't want you blindsided. Are you okay?" Forcing a steady breath, Serafina managed a soft reply. "I appreciate your concern, but it's probably some business contact or a reporter. Grant would never cheat. Not now, especially with the baby on the way." Charlotte gave a terse nod, not entirely convinced. She squeezed Serafina's hand before moving on, leaving Serafina to a torrent of conflicting emotions. She glanced down at her growing belly, feeling the baby's slight movements. Could Grant be harboring such a betrayal? She tried to push the thought away, focusing instead on greeting guests. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it would continue to grow until it demanded answers she might not be prepared to face. When Grant finally arrived at the Plaza Hotel, the benefit was nearing its end. Most of the big donors had already made their appearances. The silent auction winners had been announced, and the dessert course was being served. Serafina saw him the moment he swept into the ballroom, exuding confidence in his tailored suit. Yet he looked oddly disheveled, his collar askew, a light sheen of sweat on his forehead. She watched him pause to greet a board member from Lancaster Capital, forcing a charismatic laugh, then scanning the crowd. When his gaze finally landed on her, he offered a polished smile, as though everything was perfectly normal. A wave of hurt and anger surged within her. She had stayed up countless nights planning this event, banking on his moral and financial support, and he'd sauntered in at the 11th hour. Grant breezed over, capturing her hand and leaning in for a quick kiss on the cheek. "Sarah, sorry I'm late," he murmured, guiding her to a less crowded corner. "The market in Hong Kong took a dive at the last minute, and I had to handle urgent calls." His explanation was smooth, rehearsed even, but Seraphina's mind flashed back to Charlotte's warning. She stared at him, trying to detect any trace of dishonesty. His hair was slightly disheveled, and the faint scent of perfume, definitely not her own, clung to his jacket. Her chest constricted, but she pushed the rising panic aside. This wasn't the place for a confrontation. "It would have meant a lot to have you here earlier," she replied calmly, though her voice trembled. "These donors expect to see the name Lancaster present in more than just a logo." Grant gave a nonchalant shrug. "We raised a significant amount, right? That's what's important." Any bystander might have thought nothing was amiss, but the emotional distance between them was palpable. Seraphina noticed how Grant avoided meeting her eyes for too long. He kept scanning the room as if searching for someone or hoping not to be seen. It made Seraphina's heart sink further. Determined to keep the night from spiraling, Seraphina led him toward a cluster of lingering guests. Despite her internal turmoil, she donned a bright, gracious smile, thanking everyone for attending. A flush of relief washed over her when they praised her speech and the event's organization. At least from the outside, the fundraiser was a smashing success. Yet, as they said their goodbyes and finally left the plaza, Seraphina could not shake the unease gnawing at her. Every nerve in her body told her something was dreadfully wrong. Grant's late arrival was more than just a scheduling conflict. It carried an ominous undertone. She found herself unable to celebrate her triumph, her mind spinning with questions. She wasn't sure she wanted answered. Over the following weeks, Seraphina's routine was punctuated by new, unsettling observations. Grant's absences became more frequent, each explained by some urgent business development or sudden investor crisis. He would often leave the penthouse at odd hours, phone clutched in his hand as though tethered to some private secret. When she questioned him, he'd offer a hurried excuse, then disappear, leaving Seraphina alone with her growing belly and growing anxieties. Late one evening, she sat in their opulent living room, scrolling aimlessly through social media. Memories of the hospital benefit flicked through her mind. Charlotte's words haunted her. Could it be that Grant truly had another woman in his life? She tried to recall the perfume she'd caught on his jacket and realized she recognized the floral notes of a brand she never wore, Marc Jacobs Daisy. It was popular, but it certainly wasn't hers. Seraphina debated whether to approach Charlotte again for more details. Was it wise to chase rumors, especially in her delicate condition? She told herself to remain rational, but the pit in her stomach refused to subside. Something was off. Her husband had changed, and she had no idea why. At midnight, Grant still hadn't returned. Seraphina ventured into his home office, searching for a flash drive he'd mentioned, containing baby name ideas, a sweet gesture from him weeks ago. While rifling through drawers, she stumbled upon a small, black velvet box hidden under a stack of file folders. Her heart thumped wildly as she opened it, expecting perhaps a gift for her or a family heirloom. Instead, she found a stunning diamond ring emerald cut, flanked by smaller stones, breathtaking in its brilliance. Her first naive thought was that it must be an anniversary present. But they'd already passed their anniversary last month, and the timing didn't match. A chill skittered up her spine. Could this be for someone else? Her eyes teared up at the very notion, but she couldn't ignore the tide of dread washing over her. She hurriedly replaced the box, her hands trembling. 1,000 unanswered questions whirled in her mind. The ring was obviously brand new, not something from a family heirloom. If it were meant for her, why hide it in the office? Why not surprise her with it on their anniversary or when they learned they were expecting? Unable to quell her anxiety, she left the office, heart pounding so loudly it seemed to echo in the silent penthouse. For the remainder of the night, she lay awake in bed, her hands protectively over her belly, grappling with a dreaded certainty. Something was deeply wrong, and the diamond ring was a clue she couldn't bury. The following morning, Serafina awoke unrested, eyes puffy from a sleepless night of worrying. After a feeble attempt at breakfast toast and ginger tea, she found herself craving the support of a friend. The only person she trusted with such a delicate matter was Charlotte, who had never steered her wrong. Her friend had called weeks ago with those ominous rumors. Maybe she knew more than she'd initially disclosed. Serafina dialed Charlotte's number with trembling fingers. Charlotte picked up on the second ring. "Serafina, how are you? You sound tense." Sighing, Serafina replied, "I need to talk to you. Are you free for coffee?" An hour later, they met at a cozy cafe on the Upper East Side, far from the typical hot spots frequented by gossip columnists. Charlotte arrived in a stylish trench coat, her worried expression only intensifying when she saw Serafina's pale face. They slid into a booth by the window, and Serafina wasted no time. She recounted Grant's mysterious absences, the perfume on his jacket, and most disturbingly, the diamond ring stashed away in his office. As she spoke, her voice grew shakier, tears threatening to spill. Charlotte listened intently, nodding in empathy. When Serafina finished, Charlotte gently placed a hand on hers. "I'm so sorry you're going through this. Look, I've been hearing rumors. In the social circuit, Grant's been seen with a woman named Dahlia Moretti. She's a rising star in the art world. People saw them dining together at Philippe Chow, traveling in the same car to gallery openings. The speculation is that it's more than business." Serafina felt a sharp pang in her chest. Hearing the other woman's name made it all too real. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she whispered, tears threatening to fall. Charlotte's eyes brimmed with sympathy. "I wasn't sure, and I didn't want to add stress to your pregnancy. But after you mentioned the ring, it might be related." "The ring could be for her, Serafina." A hush settled over them. Serafina clutched the rim of her teacup, desperately trying to maintain composure. The weight of this revelation felt suffocating. She pictured Grant kneeling before someone else, sliding that diamond onto Dahlia's finger, a horrifying thought, especially given that Serafina was carrying his child. "I can't jump to conclusions, but I can't ignore this either," Serafina said, her voice trembling. "What should I do?" Charlotte squeezed her hand. "Be careful. Confront him if you must, but make sure you're safe physically, emotionally, financially. Men like Grant have powerful resources, and you need to protect yourself. I'm here if you need anything." Tears finally broke free, trailing down Serafina's cheeks. She dabbed them away, nodded in gratitude, and stared out the window at the busy street. She had glimpsed a version of her future she never imagined, one where she faced betrayal, heartbreak, and uncertainty, all while carrying a child she loved beyond words. Yet she silently vowed to uncover the truth, no matter how painful. Instead of confronting Grant outright, Serafina decided on a more discreet path. She needed definitive proof, no more rumors, no half-truths. The ring in the office, the perfume, and the gossip about Dahlia Moretti pointed to one damning reality, but she couldn't allow herself to spiral into despair without absolute certainty. So she embarked on a subtle investigation of her own. Under the guise of reordering some furnishings for their penthouse, Serafina convinced one of Grant's personal assistants, a timid but kind woman named Felicia, to share his schedule. Felicia, sympathetic to Serafina's pregnancy, had no reason to suspect anything amiss. She gave Serafina a copy of the monthly calendar, peppered with corporate meetings, flights to London for investor talks, and dinners that sounded suspiciously personal. Serafina noticed a recurrent name in Grant's schedule, DM, Incorporated meeting popping up twice a week. A quick online search for DM Incorporated revealed it as Dahlia Moretti's fledgling art consultancy. Serafina's stomach clenched. Why so many meetings with an art consultant? Her mind flashed to Charlotte's warnings. That evening, while Grant was out at one such DM Incorporated meeting, Serafina sneaked into his home office again. She searched through his emails on the desktop computer, half expecting to find them guarded by advanced passwords. Surprisingly, the system was only partially secured, giving her enough access to his sent messages. Guilt gnawed at her, but she forged ahead, telling herself she had no choice. Her heart pounded as she read subject lines: private viewing at gallery, schedule for trip to Milan, romantic weekend. The latter email, from Grant to Dahlia, made Serafina's stomach twist. It spoke of a plan to spend a weekend at a 5-star resort in Tuscany. Ironically, the place Serafina had always dreamed of visiting for a baby moon. The email concluded with, "I have something special to show you there. Wear something stunning." Tears blurred her vision. She scanned more messages, exchanges laced with flirtatious undertones, references to our future, and even an attached image of a ring that looked remarkably similar to the one Serafina had found. Any lingering doubt evaporated. Grant wasn't just having a fling, he was carving out an entire alternate life with Dahlia. And the ring was the symbol of a new commitment, one that excluded Serafina entirely. She slumped into the desk chair, feeling lightheaded. Her hand instinctively moved to her belly, where the baby gave a fluttering kick. Fury, pain, and betrayal waged war inside her. Her beloved husband was planning to propose to another woman, while she, his pregnant wife, was left in the dark. As if on cue, the doorbell rang, jolting her from her anguish. Wiping her tears, she hastily exited the office. She felt like an intruder in her own home, carrying the burden of a secret she never wanted to discover. The path forward was clear. She needed to see it for herself, to confirm the ultimate betrayal with her own eyes. Only then could she decide how to protect herself and her unborn child from the devastating fallout that was sure to come. Over the next few days, Serafina wrestled with conflicting emotions. She yearned to confront Grant through the damning emails and the ring in his face, demand an explanation, demand answers. But she feared that any abrupt confrontation might lead to him shutting her out entirely, leaving her without the security or clarity she needed. Most of all, she worried about how the stress might affect the baby. Her indecision ended one afternoon when her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Unknown Serafina Lancaster? I believe we should talk. Meet me at the Dominion Lounge tonight at 9 p.m. It's urgent. D. Moretti. Serafina's heart lurched. Dahlia Moretti? Why would the mistress text her directly? 1,000 scenarios flashed through her mind, each more horrifying than the last. Was Dahlia taunting her, or perhaps wanting to strike a deal? Reluctantly, Serafina realized she couldn't ignore it. She needed to know what Dahlia was up to, especially if Grant had shared personal details that might jeopardize Serafina's future. That evening, Serafina arrived at the Dominion Lounge, a sophisticated cocktail bar tucked away in Midtown. Soft jazz music wafted through the dimly lit space, where glossy mahogany tables were bathed in the gentle glow of candlelight. Her heart pounded as she scanned the patrons, searching for Dahlia. It wasn't difficult to spot her, a glamorous figure with dark, cascading hair, seated at a corner table. She wore a fitted ivory jumpsuit, exuding effortless confidence. Nerves aflame, Serafina walked over, her maternity dress barely skimming her belly. She wondered if Dahlia noticed how visibly pregnant she was. The other woman motioned for her to sit, an enigmatic smile on her lips. "Thank you for coming," Dahlia began, her voice smooth yet laced with tension. She studied Serafina for a moment, perhaps gauging her reaction. "I know this is unconventional, but I felt we both deserved the truth." Serafina swallowed hard. "The truth about what?" Dahlia sighed, leaning forward. "I've been involved with Grant for almost a year now, and I didn't realize the extent of his deception. until recently. He never told me you were pregnant. He made it sound like you two were growing apart, that the marriage was a formality. Then I found out he's still living with you, that you're preparing a nursery." She paused, her expression wavering. "He's planning to propose to me." Serafina's mouth went dry. "I know." Dahlia's eyes widened. "You do? Then why? Why do you stay?" For a moment, Serafina felt a flicker of anger. The audacity of this woman asking why she stayed in her marriage, as if Serafina were the intruder. But she forced herself to focus on the bigger picture. "I didn't know how far things had gone," Serafina admitted. "I found the ring, and I've seen the emails. I just needed proof." Dahlia nodded, lips trembling slightly. "Grant promised me everything, that we'd marry, build a life together. He even insisted we start a family. Now I realize he's been spinning lies to both of us." The confession stunned Serafina. Despite the hurt Dahlia had caused, she sensed genuine anguish in the woman's voice. They were both victims of Grant's elaborate betrayal. Unsure of how to respond, Serafina stared down at the flickering candle on the table, bracing herself for what Dahlia would say next, and the unimaginable fallout that would follow. For a moment, the two women sat in pained silence. They were from different worlds: Serafina, the sophisticated socialite wife, and Dahlia, the alluring mistress and rising art consultant. Yet here they were, sharing the same devastation inflicted by one man's deceit. Dahlia was the first to speak. "I asked you here because I realize I'm not the only one he's lied to. I'm not looking for sympathy, and I'm not proud of my role. I need clarity. He's still telling me he wants to propose, but I can't marry someone who might have another life behind my back. I wanted to see if you knew anything else he's hiding." Serafina's eyes burned with unshed tears. "He's told me nothing, obviously. I only discovered bits and pieces by accident. If he's telling you he'll propose, then that ring I found is definitely for you." Dahlia swallowed, eyes fixed on the candle's flame. "I didn't mean to hurt you. When we met, Grant claimed you two were separated. I believed him. It's only recently I learned you're pregnant and still living as husband and wife." Serafina glanced away, a storm of emotions roiling within her. She never imagined having this kind of exchange with her husband's mistress. Part of her wanted to lash out, blame Dahlia for all the heartbreak. But the rational part of her saw that Dahlia too was ensnared in Grant's web of lies. "Now that we both know the truth," Serafina managed, voice trembling, "what do we do about it?" Dahlia pursed her lips. "I'm not sure. But I do know that Grant is planning something big at a private estate next week. He invited me to a retreat in the Hamptons, said he wanted to make an important announcement. I suspect that's where he intends to propose, in front of some influential friends." Her eyes flickered with unease. "I can't go through with it, not without confronting him, but I also don't want to face him alone." Serafina's heart pounded at the idea. Would Dahlia really be willing to expose Grant publicly? And did she want to be part of that spectacle? A swirl of questions clouded her mind. How would this affect her baby, her reputation, their finances? But the image of Grant confidently continuing his charade drove her to an inescapable conclusion. "You want me there," Serafina stated. Half question, half assertion. Dahlia nodded, a determined glint in her eye. "If we force him to confront both of us in front of his circle, he can't lie his way out. He'll be humiliated, but at least we'll both get the truth. Are you willing to do it?" Serafina hesitated. She thought about her unborn child, about the meltdown this confrontation might cause. Yet she also realized that letting Grant continue with his double life unchecked was even more dangerous. After a moment she nodded, voice trembling with resolution. "I'll do it. For the sake of my baby and for myself, I need to see his lies exposed." In that hushed corner of the Dominion Lounge, two wronged women found themselves forging an unlikely alliance. They would face the man who had deceived them both, determined to unmask his treachery. It was a decision that would set the stage for a confrontation more dramatic than either of them could imagine. The following days passed in a whirlwind of emotional upheaval. Serafina arranged for her close friend Charlotte to stay on standby in case the situation spiraled beyond control. Charlotte agreed without hesitation, promising to be just a phone call away. Meanwhile, Serafina discreetly squared away financial documents and important legal papers, an unsettling but necessary move to protect herself and her unborn child. She had seen enough cautionary tales among the city's elite to know how quickly power and money could vanish or be weaponized. Dahlia, for her part, kept Serafina informed about Grant's communication. True to form, he was texting Dahlia sweet nothings and sending pictures of the luxurious Hamptons estate he'd rented, describing romantic walks on the beach and candlelit dinners. Everything read like a love story he was crafting just for Dahlia, conveniently forgetting the pregnant wife he had at home. One evening, as Serafina was packing a small suitcase under the guise of visiting a friend, Grant noticed her. "Going somewhere?" he asked casually, leaning against the bedroom door frame. "I'm taking a short break," she replied, striving for a neutral tone. "My friend is having a baby shower in Connecticut, and I promised I'd help her set up." Grant nodded, but there was a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. "You sure you should be traveling? You're well into your second trimester now. I'll be careful. It's not far." She forced a smile, grateful he seemed oblivious to her real intentions. A pang of sadness twisted her heart. Once upon a time, he would have insisted on coming along or fussed lovingly over her well-being. Now, his concern felt more perfunctory than genuine. The day before the trip, Dahlia texted Serafina the final details, an address to the estate, a general timeline, and an agreed-upon plan. Dahlia would arrive with Grant that afternoon and lead him into an intimate gathering with a few of his closest associates. The rumor was that he intended to pop the question in the garden around sunset. Serafina was to arrive unannounced, giving Dahlia a signal once she was there. The rest would unfold in real time, a live showdown no one would soon forget. On the morning of her departure, Serafina paused in the penthouse living room, gazing at the panoramic view of Manhattan. The city had always been her playground: charity balls, high-end galas, philanthropic luncheons. She had reveled in her role as Grant's wife, never questioning that their union was built on trust. Now, she felt more like a stranger in her own life, about to launch an ambush on the man she once believed she'd love forever. She laid a hand over her belly, whispering a silent apology to her unborn child. This confrontation was the only way to secure their future, a future that would hopefully be free of lies, free of the poison Grant had introduced into their marriage. Steeling herself with that resolve, she closed the door behind her, setting off for the Hamptons and a reckoning that would change everything. Driving along the quiet roads leading into the Hamptons, Serafina couldn't help but admire the sprawling mansions and manicured hedges that lined the route. Tall gates guarded secluded properties, each an architectural marvel in its own right. The further she went, the more her nerves tightened. She replayed the plan in her mind, arrived discreetly, text Dahlia a signal, then wait for the opportune moment to expose Grant's duplicity. When she finally reached the address, an imposing wrought iron gate blocked the entrance. Security was tight, a small booth with a uniformed guard. She presented the name Dahlia had given her, claiming she was a late edition guest invited by Mr. Lancaster. The guard scrolled through a tablet, verified with a polite nod, and pressed a button that made the gates swing open slowly. Serafina eased her car up a winding driveway, flanked by oak trees that must have stood for centuries. At the end of the drive, stood a magnificent estate with creamy white walls, Corinthian columns, and a sprawling garden that stretched toward the Atlantic Ocean. It was the picture of affluence, exactly the kind of place Grant would choose for a grand, romantic gesture. She parked near a discreet corner and slipped out of the car, her heart pounding. A staff member ushered her toward the garden walkway. Soft classical music played from hidden speakers, and clusters of well-dressed guests sipped champagne, chatting politely. Some faces Serafina recognized from business galas, others were unfamiliar. She slipped behind a tall hedgerow, scanning the crowd until she spotted Dahlia. Standing near a marble fountain, Dahlia looked dazzling in a long, emerald green gown. Her face, however, wore an expression of tight anticipation. Grant stood beside her in a tailored navy suit, holding her hand and speaking in hushed tones to a small group that included a top Lancaster capital investor and his wife. It was a scene that, to any outsider, might have passed for a betrothed couple hosting an engagement soiree. The sight of Grant gazing at Dahlia so intimately sent a stab of agony through Serafina's chest. She forced herself to hold steady, reminding herself why she was there. Slipping her phone from her clutch, she typed a quick text. "S, I'm here." From across the garden, she saw Dahlia discreetly read the message. An almost imperceptible nod confirmed she was ready. Dahlia touched Grant's arm, guiding him toward a manicured rose archway. A hush fell over the immediate circle, suggesting something special was about to happen. Serafina's breath caught in her throat as she saw a small jewelry box cradled in Grant's hand. This was it, the moment he would seal his betrayal. Emotion roiled inside her, heartbreak, fury, and an odd, detached astonishment that this was truly happening. She took a deep, trembling breath, waiting for Dahlia's cue. In a matter of seconds, the life she thought she knew would collide with a brutal, public reality, and there would be no going back. A soft rustle of leaves punctuated the tense silence as Grant led Dahlia under the rose archway. Several guests turned to watch, some pausing in mid-conversation, evidently sensing an important announcement. With practiced charm, Grant cleared his throat, capturing the attention of everyone in earshot. "Thank you all for joining us on this beautiful day," he began, wearing that magnetic smile Serafina had once adored. His voice carried a grand confidence, as though orchestrating a scene from a romantic film. "I have a special woman here with me, someone who has brought inspiration, creativity, and boundless joy into my life." Dahlia's expression wavered, caught between heartbreak and purpose. She cast a quick, almost imperceptible glance to the hedgerow where Serafina was hidden, then back at Grant. He knelt gracefully on one knee, opening the velvet ring box with a flourish. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the diamond sparkled under the afternoon sun. "Dahlia Moretti, will you?" At that exact moment, Dahlia raised a trembling hand, signaling for him to stop. She looked around, feigning a sudden hesitation. "Grant, before I answer, I think we should have everyone here," she said, her voice carrying a curious edge. "There's someone missing." A murmur rose among the onlookers. Grant's brow furrowed, confusion seizing his features. "Missing?" he echoed. "Who could be missing?" Dahlia locked eyes with Serafina's figure behind the hedges. In a deliberate motion, she lifted her hand and beckoned. Serafina's heart pounded so violently she feared it might harm the baby. Yet she forced herself forward, step by step, emerging from the greenery like a silent storm. All eyes snapped to her as she appeared in her elegant maternity dress, her pregnant belly unmistakable. Her face was ashen, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, but her posture remained resolute. A collective gasp went up from the guests, who recognized Serafina Lancaster from society pages and philanthropic circles. The expression on Grant's face was priceless shock, horror, and an attempt to mask it all with feigned confusion. "Serafina?" he choked out. He glanced at the ring, at Dahlia, then back to his pregnant wife. The color drained from his cheeks and a cold sweat beaded on his forehead. What are you doing here?" With trembling courage, Serafina stepped closer, her gaze flickering from the ring to Dahlia and finally landing on Grant. "I think the question, Grant, is what are you doing?" she said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the tears threatening to break loose. "Proposing to another woman, while your wife is pregnant with your child?" An explosion of murmurs rippled through the audience. Cameras flashed. Someone was already capturing the unfolding drama on a phone. Grant looked like a man about to faint, the ring box still open in his hand. Dahlia took a step back, letting the weight of the spectacle fall entirely on Grant. His double life, once so carefully curated, lay fully exposed in a single catastrophic moment. And in that silence, broken only by the frantic snapping of photos and hushed whispers, Serafina finally allowed herself to feel the enormity of the betrayal. This was no longer just a rumor or a suspicion, it was living proof of Grant's deceit. And the entire world now bore witness to the ruin of his charade. Time seemed to freeze in the manicured garden, the tension so thick it was stifling. No one, not even Grant's closest associates, dared to speak or intervene. They simply stood there, an audience to the spectacle of a man who had tried to navigate two parallel lives, now colliding with catastrophic force. On his knees, the open ring box in hand, Grant's features contorted with shock, he began to stammer, desperately seeking an explanation to give the crowd and, more pressingly, to his pregnant wife, Serafina. The first, "This isn't what it looks like. Isn't it?" Serafina's voice resonated with quiet anguish, cutting through the air like a blade. "I found the ring in your office. I read the emails. You promised Dahlia a future, told her you were free, but you never said a word about your pregnant wife." Murmurs escalated, some guests shooting scornful looks at Grant, others stepping back, as if physically distancing themselves from the unfolding disgrace. Meanwhile, Dahlia crossed her arms, no longer playing the role of starry-eyed lover. She had achieved what she'd intended, publicly extracting the truth, and any illusions of romance between her and Grant were gone. Grant stumbled to his feet, slamming the ring box shut. His gaze darted between Serafina and Dahlia, searching for an ally and finding none. In the swirl of panic, he attempted damage control. "This is a misunderstanding, everyone. Please calm down." He tried to laugh it off, but the forced chuckle died in his throat. "Serafina, let's talk privately." "No," she shot back, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. "I deserve answers right here. So does Dahlia. So does everyone." Her voice wavered, but she stood her ground. "Explain how you justified betraying your wife and unborn child, all while planning a proposal to your mistress." At that, Dahlia lifted her chin, tears glimmering in her own eyes. "Yes, Grant, tell us how you thought you could manage both of us. Did you think we'd never find out? Or did you believe your power and money would cover your tracks?" The questions hung in the air, unanswered. Grant's face seemed to crumple under the dual weight of exposure and humiliation. He reached out as if to touch Serafina's arm, but she recoiled, the betrayal too raw. In that instant, cameras flashed again, capturing forever the image of a man defeated and two women bound by his treachery. Unable to bear the collective glare of the guests, Grant turned abruptly and stormed away, pushing past onlookers. A path cleared for him like the parting of seas, the crowd's silent judgment pounding on his back. As he disappeared into the estate, voices rose in fervent speculation. Some hovered near Dahlia, offering sympathy, while others approached Serafina, unsure how to console a pregnant wife spurned so publicly. Yet Serafina barely registered them. She stood in the garden, Dahlia just a few steps away, both women wearing the shock of hard truths on their faces. In that moment, it became painfully clear the life Serafina had known, one of illusions and carefully maintained facades, was shattered beyond repair. The path ahead would be steeped in legal battles, emotional trauma, and likely a public storm. But deep down, a spark of defiance warmed her chest. At least now, the lies were in the open, and in the ashes of Grant's deceit, she could begin to reclaim her life on her own terms. The fallout from the disastrous proposal was immediate and relentless. In the days following the fiasco, social media buzzed with leaked photos and videos of Grant Lancaster on bended knee while his pregnant wife appeared, tears streaming, revealing the ultimate betrayal. The tabloids had a field day. A humiliating clip even aired on a late-night talk show, fueling public outrage and mockery. Investors in Lancaster Capital expressed alarm, questioning Grant's judgment, morality, and capacity to keep the company's reputation intact. Stocks wobbled as rumors circulated that major clients might withdraw their accounts to avoid association with scandal. As if that weren't enough, a Bloomberg columnist wrote a blistering op-ed titled "The Fall of Grant Lancaster," predicting that the public relations nightmare could permanently tarnish the once respected brand. Amid the chaos, Grant barricaded himself in his office, ignoring the avalanche of calls and messages. He attempted one last strategy to salvage his predicament: a carefully crafted public apology, delivered through a press conference in which he portrayed himself as a man who made a regrettable mistake. But the damage was too severe to be mended by hollow words. The press skewered him. The internet responded with a mixture of derision and moral condemnation. Meanwhile, Serafina, though emotionally devastated, found an unexpected sense of empowerment. She hired a top-tier divorce attorney from the prestigious law firm Tinsdale and Morgan. With the baby's welfare at stake, she refused to be bullied or minimized by Grant's high-powered legal team. She and her attorney collected evidence, emails, financial documents, the eyewitness testimonies from the Hamptons debacle. The case was robust, leaving Grant's reputation and finances at risk of further collapse. As for Dahlia Moretti, she sought to distance herself from the scandal. She released a succinct statement about being misled and refused to answer any further press questions. While some publications painted her as a homewrecker, others acknowledged her as a victim of Grant's manipulative storyline. Art galleries that once courted her for showings now exercised caution, wary of the negative spotlight. Grant's perfect world, his business empire, social standing, and carefully curated image cracked like glass under the weight of his own deception. With legal pressures mounting and public sentiment against him, he found himself suddenly isolated. Friends from high society hesitated to stand by him, not wanting to be tainted by association. Even business partners he'd known for years quietly backed away. The karmic retribution, it seemed, was swift and brutal. No amount of wealth could buy him out of this scandal, and every path to redemption looked increasingly narrow. On top of everything, he was forced to reckon with the unborn child he had neglected, the pregnant wife he'd driven to heartbreak. The humiliation cut deeper by the day, a relentless echo of the moment the world watched his betrayal unfold. Yet while Grant struggled in his self-made storm, Serafina began to see a glimmer of possibility. For so long, her life had been entwined with Grant's success and illusions. Now, forced to stand alone, she discovered a backbone of resilience she never knew she possessed. If Grant thought she would crumble in his downfall, he was mistaken. The final chapter of her life with him was being written not by his hand, but hers, and it would end on her terms. Weeks rolled into months, and the winter winds sweeping through Manhattan symbolized the cold transition. Serafina was navigating, Despite the tabloids' never-ending appetite for gossip, she kept her focus on the looming divorce proceedings and the well-being of her unborn child. Every now and then, she'd catch a headline about Grant's latest round of bad press, clients pulling out, board members calling for his resignation, and she'd feel a pang of sorrow mixed with justified vindication. He had dug his own grave, and karma was merely fulfilling its role. During her quieter moments, she busied herself preparing the nursery in the penthouse she had once shared with Grant. His name was still on the deed, but her attorney was negotiating for Serafina to retain the property as part of the divorce settlement. She lovingly assembled a crib, decorated the walls with soft colors and whimsical animal decals, finding solace in the simple act of nesting. She was determined that her child would enter the world in a space filled with calm, free from the turmoil that had defined the last few months. In the lead up to the baby's birth, Serafina's circle of true friends rallied around her. Charlotte organized a cozy baby shower, attended by supportive acquaintances who admired Serafina's poise through adversity. Gifts and warm wishes poured in, a testament to the empathy people felt for a woman forging ahead after public betrayal. As the divorce proceedings intensified, Grant tried several ploys, accusations of sabotage, pleas for reconciliation, even belated admissions of guilt. But Serafina stood firm, guided by her attorney's advice and her own newfound resolve. In the final court hearing, the judge acknowledged the overwhelming evidence of Grant's infidelity and emotional harm. He ruled in Serafina's favor for a substantial settlement, ensuring both her and the baby's financial security. On the day she received the divorce decree, Serafina felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. This was the final severance from the life she had envisioned, the grand illusions of a perfect marriage, the man she once believed loved her unconditionally. Yet there was also peace. The future ahead might be uncharted, but it was hers. No more lies, no more playing second fiddle to a man's double life. Shortly after, Serafina went into labor. Surrounded by a small team of supportive friends, she brought a healthy baby boy into the world. Holding him in her arms, she felt the magnitude of love and protection flood her heart. She named him Gabriel, symbolizing strength and hope amidst turmoil. In the quiet hours of the hospital room as Gabriel slept, Serafina gazed out the window at the city lights. She whispered a promise to her son, a vow that she would build a life of honesty, love, and resilience for both of them. Grant's betrayal might have been the darkest chapter of her life, but that chapter was closed. Ahead lay the promise of a new dawn where she could finally breathe free, unfettered by the weight of secrets. From lavish proposals to shocking revelations, Serafina's life changed forever the moment she discovered her husband's double life. But through heartbreak and humiliation, she summoned a fierce resilience, protecting herself and her unborn child from his deceit. Even as Grant faced a public reckoning, a rapid fall from grace, Serafina focused on forging a future filled with honesty, love, and unbreakable strength. Thank you for sharing in this emotional journey. If Serafina's story of betrayal and triumph resonated with you, please like this video to show your support. Share it with friends who need a story of hope amid adversity. And subscribe to this channel to discover more stories that prove even the darkest trials can lead to a brighter tomorrow. Your engagement helps bring more empowering tales like this to life. Stay tuned, and remember, sometimes the hardest karma ushers in the greatest personal victory.